Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone. And now, here is your host, the lovely, delightful, insightful, and all-around great gal, Ms. Barbara DeLong.
Good evening, everybody. That intro always makes me smile. Welcome to Nightlight. Tonight's a special night because we have Michele Avanti with us, and so far we haven't screwed up technically. So we're go for the evening. Michele, welcome back.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. What a challenging time we're in, huh?
Yes, and I wanted to bring up what's going on here, because when you talked to us about the eclipse and what it was a forewarning of, and what it was the sort of entering, signaling a time of tribulation to a certain extent. Right. To have what happened in Nevada happen was just overwhelming. And somebody said, well, it was, so unusual. And I kept thinking, this is not unusual. This is going to continue for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, the nation, in terms of the national chart, where we are in time, in our awareness, the chart speaks to us being in a period where we have to come again to recognize who we are, what we value, what is really important, what does the word America mean, and what are Americans? What does it mean to be an American? And we got quite a few years of trying to figure that out. It's not 1 year or 2 years, it's quite a few. And this eclipse that just came into our path across this nation signals a 5-year period of really tumultuous times to get us to take a serious look at who we are. Mm-hmm. Where are we? It's kind of, I call this a passage point. We individually have passage points where we have to stop and say, now wait a minute, I've been doing this for a long time and I do it without any conscience at all. It's something I do automatically. So and so calls, I always say yes. So such and such happens, I always do this. And you reach this plateau moment where you have to take another look and say, wait a minute, that's not who I am anymore. I don't even like doing that. Why do I keep saying yes? And as a nation, we're at that plateau. What have we been saying yes to that we have not really considered? Why are we saying yes, and who we are today and what yes means? When we talk about the Constitution, which is just incredible, an incredible piece of writing, a document that the spiritual master that trained me on the inner planes when I was very young, when I was a child, he was there at that signing. He was there at the signing of the Magna Carta before that. And so it is definitely an inspired and incredible document, but it could not foresee things that we have now. There's no way they could understand at that time that anyone would have an assault rifle that could fire off, 50 bullets in a minute.
Yeah.
No one knew that at that time. They could not foresee that. They wrote that document, inspired as it is, within the state of consciousness of that time. And they could foresee things like Jefferson knew that we needed to stop being racially divided. He knew that people needed to be equal. He knew in his heart that women were equal to men. But saying those things at that time would have gotten him nowhere, because there was not enough of that state of consciousness to bring people over the line. And of course, he participated in it because he was born into it.
Well, sure.
And I'm not saying that's a good excuse. He still needed to stand up. Washington, at least he did stand up, and he made sure to free many, many, many of his slaves. And before he died, all of them were free. Jefferson was not quite that enlightened. But, it's the history of our nation. And where we are now, we are at another plateau in time. We've come to a Saturn return and come through that. We are in a Mars retrograde period, which will go on for a long time, for the majority of this century. And when Mars is retrograde, we fight within ourselves. So we're going to have to struggle with these many, many facets and come to some new conclusion of who are we. And certainly the young people in this country will have a huge voice in it. They think they have no voice right now, but their day will come.
Well, now, since the country is going through this kind of transformation, aren't we all going through the same type of thing? Aren't we mirroring what's going on with the country to a certain degree within our own personal lives?
Of course we are, because, then you when I talk about the national chart, then we're looking the national chart within the framework of the solar chart. Of course, we don't have a solar chart. I could not tell you the birth of the solar system. I'd love to have that chart if anyone out there has it. And someone might channel it, actually. But nonetheless, it doesn't exist. But we are within a formation of an ecosystem that continues to move. And the book that we can look to from our Western civilization point of view, I'd love to hear someone who has a Chinese point of view or an Indian point of view. I would love to hear their voices. But from a Western civilization point of view, we look at the Bible, and the Bible says, that the time of revelations will come again when the planet comes again into the footstool of the dog star. And that's where we are in the solar system. That is a statement about the solar system. Mm-hmm. Our sun now has the entire solar system that is around our sun, which is our planet, is in that body, has moved to the footstool of the dog star, which is Sirius. And this is that 26,000 year point. And so here we are in a doorway. It is the doorway in time where we have the greatest advantage to leap forward beyond anything that we've been chugging along with in the past. And of course, we've seen how we've been moving rapidly since we were even approaching it. When you look at the last century, the beginning of the last century, the enormous leaps we made in terms of changing the way we looked at everything. If you go back to the late 1800s, we ended the period began of Reconstruction at the end of the 1800s, and it was still pretty much the Dark Ages in this country. And as we moved into the early 1900s, we started to have some kind of conscience. we started to identify that there was child labor going on in our country, and that was not right, and that women did not have the right to vote, and that people were being used by businesses to the point that they were abused, because men would stand in line to get into a factory and they would take anybody at whatever price they wanted to pay them. So it was a time where we had a revolution at the early part of that century, as there was a technological revolution taking place in terms of the industrialization of manufacturing. And of course, as you go over the course of that century, many, many changes came. And World War II, of course, brought the big question to the entire planet. Do we allow genocide? Do we allow other countries to invade countries? Or do we act as a unit and step in and say no? And that was an enormous fight in this country, because we were across the water. And most Americans said, why should we get involved? We're not part of Europe. We're not part of Asia. We're not part of these areas. We're independent. But of course, that question is a question of conscience. And consciousness had to take another step. And it did. Eventually, we did enter the war. And of course, then we entered the war and did something that was yet another question of consciousness. We came to a point where we literally dropped the most horrific bomb that had ever been seen. We annihilated civilizations in the areas where it was dropped. We literally removed human bodies from their bones. It's horrendous when you look at our history. And so we had to come then together as a people of the world to say, let's stop this. So it was a point of moving forward in consciousness, and that's where we formed alliances, and we formed NATO, and we formed the United Nations later on. And these were formed with a state of consciousness that says we won't let this ever happen again. And of course, now what's happening, we've taken still another step into this century, where we've gone beyond industrialization into technological weaving. We have cyber warfare, a whole new kind of war. And you can see it everywhere now as our eyes are opening to understanding it. We're seeing how Russia has made a determination, and it's the oldest way of war that there is, divide and conquer. Mm-hmm. You want to demolish anything or anyone, you divide the people, make them fight among themselves, and then you walk in and take over.
Well, isn't there also a sense of, at least at this particular point in time, that there is a revolution of cosmic consciousness
absolutely
at play as well?
Yeah, and see, we can also follow that, because even that, you look at the 1920s, 1930s, as people were waking up to issues of child labor and perhaps having work unions so workers could get together against the corporations, and women getting suffrage and women having rights. And as we were doing all of that, on a level of spiritual consciousness, the doorways were opened up. Rabbi Jacobs, I believe his name was, who stepped forward and said the books of mysticism that belong to the Hebrew people need to belong to the world. And he opened up the doors, never been done before that, for millennia. They had held that information closely. The Kabbalah was a secret book. Mm-hmm. And it has much wisdom in it. When you look back in time, the people the 12 tribes of Israel carried information. It didn't just go back to Egypt, it went back to Atlantis. And in that, in the Kabbalah, is the secrets of consciousness. How was this planet laid out? How were the levels of consciousness set in this particular hemisphere, this world, this ecosystem we call planet Earth or Gaia? What did soul come here to work with, and what are the archetypes that work here? And it explains all of that. It explains the states of consciousness that individuals can have when they come in, how they adopt consciousness, and what are the challenges to each different type of state. All of that is in it. So then that began to open up doorways, and with that, people started to open up spiritually more and more and more. And as you look to the harmonic convergence that took place in the late 80s, you had another level, another step, and you could watch how consciousness moved into the many avenues that can reach millions of people. And I remember at that point in time, around the time of the harmonic convergence, that was the first time we had seen a movie released that went on television. It was a bunch of it. It was a movie, and it went on TV as miniseries. That's what it was. And it was McLean's Out on a Limb. Out on a Limb actually said to the world, people do come back. Soul does go on. It is a journey of consciousness, not a physical body's lifetime. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge leap forward. For mainstream media to say that was huge. But those are all, you can look, there's so many people, so many individuals, so many souls that I think of them as, I don't even know if they realize how miraculous they are. Most people just think this is my life and it's, it's my life.
Yeah.
They don't realize what magnificent beings we each are and how our very thoughts influence all the worlds.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so here we are now at this point where the violence of technology has got to be identified and understood. And this is the question that is in front of us. And it will continue to be in front of us till we get through the 5 years of this eclipse pattern. The question of a hydrogen bomb being dropped by North Korea.
Oh, yeah.
The question of automatic assault weapons, being able to take a semi-automatic weapon and turn it into an automatic weapon. Why are these on the streets of America? I asked this question having been in the military and knowing exactly how military weapons are designed. They're not just designed to shoot something like a rifle you use on a farm to kill an animal that might be hurting someone or for food, but rather they're designed to murder, maim, destroy the human body or whatever body that bullet enters.
Oh, yeah.
The bullets are designed so that when they come out of that muzzle, they're spinning. And when they spin and enter a human body or any body, it will bounce off, it will ricochet inside the body off of the bones. Thus, it destroys everything in its path. And normally, when it enters entering with a little tiny hole. When it exits with an enormous hole. There's no reason to have those on the streets of this country or anywhere else. But no. We as a people in this nation and people across the world will have to come to an understanding of what is acceptable and how do we step into a new understanding, a new level of responsibility that can go beyond where we've been. Because on the other side of this is an enormous amount of information that is just waiting to be delivered to us to take technology beyond anything we have seen, but rather into the world of things we have dreamed. It will be non-invasive understanding of the body, of the electronics of the body, and the movement of the body in terms of its cellular structure across time and space. All of that is available, and there's a whole lot more that goes with that, but it can't be delivered. Even though many people have come close to reaching that state of consciousness, it can't be delivered till we get past this point. It
feels as though, we're all going through I mean, this is all very, very fresh, but we've had the hurricanes, we've had this, we've had other things happening. It does feel like the world is coming apart to a degree. And
well, I think you have to come apart sometimes to come together.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a good thing. It's just that when people are looking at this, initially, you see the best of humanity in situations like this. You see people helping people they don't know. Nobody stops and says, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Let me help you. I mean, there's none of that. People are just helping people, which is a wonderful thing in this kind of a situation. It doesn't last that long, however. And the pointing of the fingers is already starting. People trying to regulate things instead of taking care of what's going on now. We're at a point in time where I think every individual has to really question their belief system to a certain degree and allow for an expansion of consciousness. And it's not something that will happen automatically. It's something that we all have to work at. And that's where I think what most people don't understand. This is a time of questioning everything and making choices and decisions about your forward motion, the direction you're going to go from now on.
Yeah, well, the good news is, even though you say it doesn't happen automatically, and that's true for the very beginning part of it, but once you hit the tipping points activate around 20%. When 20% of the people of the world say, I can see peace, we will tip over into peace. When 20% of the people in America say, I don't want to be a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, I want what's best for America, then we will tip into that. We can do it, and we will do it. I don't see party systems continuing. I see a change that will unify a world and unify our nation. The fear that many people have is that they will have a loss. They fear that they will lose their power. They will lose an income source. They will lose their culture at a very deep level, or they'll lose their religion. We don't have to choose to lose anything. We can keep whatever we want and still have a unified world. It's just fear that drives people down the wrong path. And any time you're acting out of fear, unless it's to remove your hand from the fireplace.
Yes. A good idea.
You're not acting for the preservation of who you are or the rest of us. You always have to question fear.
Well, yeah. And I think the things that are happening now are a forerunner of I think a couple of months that are going to be very tough for the whole country.
Yes.
And it's a matter of personal exploration, really.
Yeah.
I've met people that have just gone off literally half-cocked.
Unfortunately, and that's running out of fear. That's exactly what that means, half-cocked.
Yeah, let me place blame somewhere, not on me. Yeah. And let me point a finger at someone instead of, how can we resolve this? How can we make this better? How can we put out peace?
Yeah. Being an astrologer, of course, the first thing I did after waking up this morning and hearing what happened was, as soon as I had the opportunity to run the chart for Las Vegas, the ingress chart. I do the ingress, and I don't know if you caught my Facebook, but with all the fear concerning the bomb and North Korea, I did run the ingress chart for the United States of America and also for North Korea. And I did post it on my Facebook page for anybody who wants to go look at it. And I was able to determine it does not appear that we will be creating any new wars during this period. And it does not appear that we would be thus going to war with Korea. However, Korea seems to be struggling with enemies, and the enemies seem to have the upper hand. And they would certainly bomb or draw weapons, but it looks like they're drawing weapons against an adversary that they cannot actually manifest. They're more of an illusion than a reality. It's almost like they're dropping bombs in the ocean is the kind of statement.
Mm-hmm.
So when this happened last night in Las Vegas, I went ahead and did the ingress chart, which of course is the September 22nd when the sun goes into Libra at 000 for Las Vegas, and to see what is the 3 months of this chart look like. What was in the chart that said this could even happen? And of course, I have Saturn right on the ascendant, and Saturn, of course, brings things down, and there is an interesting, I'm always looking for where is the good news.
Yes.
There, aside from all the horrible stuff in there, there is also a grand trine in this picture. So Saturn, who is obviously bringing things down, and it's an international picture bringing them down. It's a question of religion. It's a question of spirituality. It's a question of making public news. There are a whole lot of statements in here, but that Saturn that's creating the havoc is also tied to a grand trine with Uranus and the North Node at 22 degrees, a mystical, spiritual degree of mastery in Leo. So it's saying that this event that will take place, that will be taking down the people and hit every piece of public information around the world, also is a doorway for change, for revolution that can create mastery in terms of leadership. So who will come out of this is my question. We've seen leadership certainly in how the people helped each other. To have nearly 600 people hurt and 59 of them to have died, it was mostly the people that were at that concert who actually helped everyone else get to hospitals.
Yeah.
That's leadership. So there is going to be more that will come out of this chart. And the word leadership says it is not just leadership, but a mastery of leadership. That's quite a statement. So there is something good in all of this. And it breaks my heart to see these magnificent beings who gave their lives for this moment to bring awareness and to step the country to another point. When you look at this chart, I don't know what the information is because I have not seen all the news. I've been running all day, but this looks like a lot of women in this. I don't know if there is a percentage of men to women who have been injured or died. I would like to hear what that percentage, because it looks like a lot of women to me.
Huh. Well, in times like this, where there is that opportunity for great spiritual understanding and awakening and everything, why does there have to be such chaos and such tragedy?
Because that is the way that we have developed our learning experience, and that is one of the things we are going to step beyond as we transform to this next level. But if you look back, I mean, even in just the sayings people have, no pain, no gain, that's a saying. You've heard it a million times. People have chosen that state of consciousness that says, if I go through pain, I will become a better person. If I become the martyr, I will go to heaven. If I am the injured party, I will gain in a different way. And that is why people tend to believe they must have painful experiences in order to step beyond. We need to get that entire belief system and dissolve it. Add a spoon of sugar and let's go forward.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at birth is painful, yet you get a child from it. And in a way, we're birthing a new level, hopefully, a new level of consciousness. And but look at 9/11. Wasn't 9/11 the same kind of a situation?
Oh, gosh. Even the marathon was the same kind of situation. Where did we move forward? How did we move forward? And I'll tell you, when I think about 9/11, the state of consciousness of this country, it doesn't even begin to compete with where we are now. It's almost like looking at a 78 vinyl record and saying, look at that, and look at my flash drive with 100 albums.
Okay.
That's how different the state of consciousness already is compared to 9/11. 9/11 it's almost like a lifetime ago, but it changed everything. It changed the way that we dealt with everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it absolutely did. And so
it created a whole new industry called the TSA.
Yes. Well, this situation, will make an impact in a lot of things. I know a lot of people that are now saying, I will never go to an outside concert again, or I will never go to a massive stadium again, or I will never, everybody is saying, they won't do things again, and yet you all know that they will. But yeah. It does bring into mind, though, greater awareness and hopefully greater care with dealing with massive crowds like this. But
it gives an entrance for the technology that's already there that has not been released, and it will, and that might be what the doorway will be. People won't have to go to a big event like that. They'll have small gatherings all over the globe that'll be holographic gatherings. So they can perform basically out of one studio and create everything and holographically appear in different places all over the globe at the same moment. And that's coming. I mean, that's already there, and it's just a matter of setting the grid to make it happen. So, who knows? That might be a doorway to that. We have, people get into a space where they say, I'll never do this again, but you have to live your life. You can't live your life saying, what if? If you do what if, I don't think you'll even touch a doorknob. And I guess you'll die hungry.
Probably not.
So, because we could say what if about anything.
Well, that's true. But, what if everybody started to understand the spirit and the energy and the power that we carry within? And what if we stopped competing with one another and started cooperating? I mean, even in family.
That is a statement of bringing into a more balanced state the masculine consciousness on the planet, because the masculine consciousness is not designed for that.
Well, then let's redesign it. I mean,
well, it's going to take a little rewiring, because literally men were wired to be hunters and gatherers and to get out there and to protect the females. And women were wired to cooperate, to make sure that we could multitask a gazillion things so everything would be ready when the gather hunters came home with the goods. So we're wired differently.
But you're really talking the archetypes that we now have embedded in our DNA.
And it's time to upgrade.
Okay, so you have an archetype all sorts of archetypes that we come into this incarnation pre-programmed with these archetypes. So how does one change the archetypal?
It's a spiral. It's about time where many of them are already changing. I mean, you can meet men today who that hunter-gatherer is just nowhere near at the level it used to be. I mean, the difference between a man born in 1954 and a man born in 2012, they're almost not even reflective of each other.
Well, that's true.
That's a rewiring, which is what part of the whole issue of where we are in time is about. Where we are being at the footstool of the dog star, we are in a zone where the electrical patterns are more active. Your ability to connect or go through to the other side is wide open.
So a conscious choice, will make a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. If a person said, I choose this now, and they're with their heart truly saying that, then the beings that are divine that work with them, as well as their higher self, have the ability to rewire. They've been rewiring people now for a long time. I've had many upgrades. And I'm sure you have. I'm sure most of the people listening have.
Oh, I would think so. And you're so fascinating. I forgot to say that we were taking readings tonight, and if anybody was interested in getting a reading, you can try calling 918-707-8787. That's 918-707-8787. And, if nobody calls in, then I still want to go on with this because we as individuals, all of us are looking in horror at what's going on, and part of it is I'm glad I wasn't there, but it's also how can I make it so my life is safe? And
yeah, well, it's a very simple answer to that question. Stay in alignment with your higher self.
Mm-hmm.
Because your higher self will make sure that wherever you are is the perfect place for you. And if you have made a dedication at some level before you came into this body that said, I will be the martyr, you can go through with that and maybe would be there. But if you have decided that I choose to let those things go, to no longer be part of that state of consciousness, I choose instead to live the next 600 or 800 or 900 years and expand consciousness and be one of the many who are willing to act as a source for Gaia and a source for Creator to continue to expand consciousness through my very being, then you will no longer be a part of anything that could take you down.
You just made a great statement, and everybody is going to ask the same question that I'm going to ask, and that is, okay, I want to stay in line with my higher self, with my higher consciousness. How do you do that? How do you know what is in line and what is not in line? I mean, it's a wonderful phrase, but how do you do it?
It's actually very simple. People complicate everything. We have so many techniques available today to do that. You can pick any of them. It doesn't make any difference. Or you could simply stay in a mode where when you wake up in the morning, you know who you are. You say, today I am that I am. I am the light. I am divine. I am a vehicle for my higher self, and each moment that I breathe, with every breath, I become more intrinsically aligned with who I truly am. I continue to grow into being the light. I am the light. And if you say that every morning and throughout the day, every single time you have a challenge, if you say, I am the light, the way parts for me, I stand in light. I am here, as a vehicle for light. I am. The way will part for you. It doesn't happen necessarily within the instant, but I guarantee, give it 3 minutes or so, it will happen. It's knowing, it's stepping into knowingness that you are. And you can do that. It's practice. Everything is practice. There's nothing that you can do in the physicality that isn't some form of practice. So what practice are you practicing? What have you been practicing? What do you choose to practice? People who choose to practice yoga, and there are many, many, many people doing that today, which is a delight to my soul. They are practicing balance.
And peace, yes.
How to be in balance is to be in peace. It is to be in a state of contentment, which is in a continual state of meditative experience, which is in alignment with the higher self. That is what it is. When we are in laughter or contentment, we are aligned with the higher self.
Okay, that makes sense. I got that.
What throws most people off is when they hit an emotional block.
Yes, I was just gonna. My computer went wonky on me. My mouse and my keyboard did not work. And after cursing at them and yelling at them and throwing one or two of them on the floor, I tried to, come to oneness. And I looked at them and I said, basically, I'm a spirit that is full of love, and I love you, and I would love for you to work with me. And I promise not to throw you on the floor again. And, they still didn't work.
But you might have needed an upgrade.
I don't know what I needed, but it took a computer tech to come here and get them working again. But I mean, I think I feel strongly, I agree with everything that you're saying. And it's the kind of peaceful, tranquil lifestyle that is difficult to maintain full time.
It's practice.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I love computer stories because, I'm the devil and me are the computer. My interactions with people are absolutely mild and completely without any issue, no matter who they are, no matter what they say to me. I don't really have any issue because I absolutely just know that there is love between us, no matter who I am with, no matter who approaches me. I know there will always be love between us, and it's a knowingness. I know that I only attract the most magnificent beings in the universe. They are all magnificent that come to me and that will be near me, whether it is when I'm standing in need of a change of attire or when I am at a coffee shop or at the grocery store. It doesn't matter. So that's no problem. My devil is in the computer, of course, and my husband, of course, is so wonderful because he'll say, "Honey, step away from it." And I pretty much learned over the years that what happens with the computer is what we call in the spiritual path the last of the vices. It is attachment. When we have attachment, we will have pain. When we remove all attachment, there will no longer be pain of any kind.
Okay.
So what happens is, as soon as my computer decides not to work for me for whatever reason, I become incredibly attached to having it work for me. Instead of saying, "Oh, so you need a little break." I need a break too. Obviously, we both need breaks. And so I would do what my husband wisely tells me and step away from the computer and come back an hour later and it will work.
Sometimes it does. Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then I know that I need an upgrade. So, but its attachment is what it comes down to. And we become most attached when we have an adversary. We create an adversary of our computer, or we create an adversary of the person who says, "Well, I believe this." and you don't believe this, so now they're an adversary. But we have to remember there are really no adversaries.
I have really no problem with people who don't think the way I do. I can easily say to people, well, then let's just agree to disagree, because you believe strongly and I believe strongly, and we seem to be in different spots, so let's pick a different topic. And I have no trouble with that. That's easy for me. But when it comes to something that doesn't have a consciousness,
something you don't think you can really talk to,
there is a power struggle, I think, and it's like, I've done this right, and it becomes frustrating. I understand it's a learning experience for me, and I also understand that there are things that I haven't yet learned, so I have to go to an expert for them. But those momentary glitches where you're in the middle of something and it just goes completely, I'm going to take a nap now. Yeah, I mean,
you just have to learn that it is a moment of attachment, and you're attached to control at that moment.
Yes.
You want to continue to be in control, and you're saying, I have control, you will work. No, we're not doing it. But, what you have to do at that moment is step outside of the experience and say, what is this experience? Is there any way that I can identify what it is? And you may not be able to identify, because it may be that the man that you're going to call has some question that only you have the ability to answer.
Well, in retrospect, out of the moment, I always see wisdom in what's happened. I always know that the experience was there for me to step away, to take a break. I understand that the universe is total wisdom, and it's just that there are momentary times when, I just am not open to the subtleties the universe sends. I need to be hit in the face with a 2x4, and
it's a good idea to practice going beyond that. Because I'll tell you, I've been hit with those 2x4s just like you, and it's not fun.
Now, those 2x4 moments really do hurt, but something, Michele, if we were perfect, we wouldn't be here.
Well, they say that, but that's not really true. Christ was here. He was pretty darn perfect.
Yeah.
So why don't you choose to be perfect?
Because I don't want to die. I mean...
Wrong. No. Perfection is such a great word, but even Christ wasn't perfect.
I'm sure not.
He was perfect compared to anyone we know. He was certainly within our illusion of what perfection was, but even Christ had more to do and more to learn and more to go and more to grow. He is a being of great light, far beyond anything I can personally perhaps understand, but in my linear mind.
Yeah, but
in the divine concept, we are more than capable of being that.
We all have that piece of Christ consciousness inside of us.
And so we can strive to be as close to that as we can, which actually, the saying, what would Christ do? What would Buddha do? What would Krishna do? What would Kuan Yin do? What would Mother Mary do? Those statements are statements where we step into that state of consciousness. We say, I am willing to enter this state of consciousness. Now show me how. And when we do that, we open the doorway for our heart to meet perfection as we think of it with our linear mind. But what perfection really is not that linear statement, but rather it is an oval of light. It is like a radiating light of compassion. That's what perfection is. When we stand in a light of compassion, everything is perfect around us.
Well, and if you literally could step into the consciousnesses of all of those individuals and give them your problem, they'd say, you're having trouble with what? And And
I love you.
It would literally be, we don't deal with that kind of technology. We are more into the perfection of spirit. And then I'd really feel stupid, you know?
No, that's when you call up on a state of consciousness of one of the great technological wizards.
I'll call on Nicholas Tesla, you know?
Exactly, and he'll straighten it out for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, seriously, if you perceive of that going into that consciousness, I would perceive it myself as being able to talk to that consciousness, that level of consciousness, and say, okay, so this is what's going on, and the answer will be, you know, you still use those kind of tools, you know.
Oh God, Barbara, I love you. You crack me up.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about being at peace with everything that there is, and even in states of chaos, to find that state of peace or that state of balance. And when we find it, then we're able to just release our attachment to the situation. And basically, as my husband says, step away from the computer and then find the balance again. And when we come back with the balance, we'll find the answer. He amazes me. You know what he does? And my husband knows nothing about computers. I mean, seriously, he knows how to use a computer. He knows how to do email and stuff like that and print labels or whatever. But when it comes right down to understanding the ins and outs of a computer, he's never been inside one. I've been in and out of computers. I've put memory in. I've taken cards, put cards. I've done all kinds of things. I've built websites. But he will go to my computer and he'll say, let me try to fix it. The man knows nothing, and he uses his little hands, his big hands, and he moves on the keyboard, and I don't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then a few minutes later, he says, honey, it's all fixed, and it's fixed. It is his peace that he brings to that computer.
Well, that could easily be, because the times that I have had issues have always been times when there has been stress, when there has been anxiety, when there has been pushing to finish something, complete something.
Exactly.
Or, you know, and
exactly. And we
because
are the creators of the stress in the computer. Don't think that this thing that appears to be just a piece of technology cannot be affected by your creative force. It can.
Oh, absolutely, because it is electricity. Our energy is electricity. I can see totally how you could screw it up. I know at one point in time, I was very into, I love crystals. I just love crystals. But at one time, I had so many crystals around my computer, and it suddenly crashed. And it, you know, when the guy came to fix it, he said, "What's all this?" And I said, "Well, they're my crystals." And he said, "Why don't you just find another place for your crystals?" And I did. And you know, the darn thing absolutely came to life and was magically cured. And it was, you know, $150 for the man to come to my house to tell me to take my crystals off my computer. This goes back a lot of years.
Well, for those who are listening, and I'm sure you know this, crystals are magnifiers of whatever your thought forms are. They absorb your thought forms and then they magnify them. So if you are going to be around a lot of crystals, you better stay balanced.
Yeah.
If you're going to be in a state where you get frustrated around your computer and it's surrounded by crystals, they will magnify that till they electrocute your computer.
Yeah, they short-circuited it. It was. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Since from the first half, we have really kind of outlined, in some ways, an unsettling next couple of years for all of humanity here in the United States. Now, knowing that we are all going to go through a form of transition of some sort, what are the best ways we can use in order to facilitate the greatest change within ourselves? I mean, you mentioned yoga, and you mentioned following your higher consciousness and stuff. Let's get a little more down to earth with people and sort of like, more to the point, more than giving them just, yoga and going inside of yourself and saying you are a being of light when you wake up, all of which are good. But the reality is that most of us are beginning to refocus our lives in many ways. And so how best to do it?
Well, that's obviously going to start with each individual. And I would say to everyone who's listening and anyone who listens down the road, ask yourself in your life, what is most disturbing? What creates the greatest amount of disillusionment? What creates the greatest amount of stress? Where are you most unhappy? Okay. And once you identify that, then that's where you can begin to make change. I would say make change on your lowest point, because once you change that, you can move to the next level and start to work on the next point. For some people, it can be just saying, well, I have to go to work to make sure ends meet. I have children to raise, and money is just, you can't stretch it far enough. I can't do all the things I want to do because I am tied to this job.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to that individual first, do you like your job? Are you happy doing your job? If the answer to that is no, and then it's followed by, but I don't have the skills to do anything else, nor the time to give to learn something else, then I would say, first thing you have to do with whatever job you have is to go in each day with understanding why you're there, so that your job becomes cause and not weight. We experience stress because we're not happy. We experience stress because we're attached to an outcome we can't have. We experience stress because we feel out of control. As soon as you start to do things from being the cause in your life, everything changes. Your intent changes everything. So if I had to go to work in a place where people maybe were not kind, I would go to work with an intent that my reason for being there was because I have children I adore, and this right now is the doorway Spirit has for me. So I'm going in and I'm going to do a job that makes me feel good at the end of the day, that I've done the best I can. If other people are mean or nasty or backstabbing, I would bless them at every turn. And you may think that's crazy. Let me tell you, the power of blessing, I can't stress enough. I have been in situations where I do this, and in a very short amount of time, the people change. And I've done nothing to change them, absolutely nothing. I've simply been who I am, and I've blessed them. I don't say it out loud. I simply always bless them when I pass them. Anytime their thought comes into my mind, I bless them. And anytime I hear someone speak about them or I hear their voice in the distance, I bless them. And of course, I have a saying that I use, and that's an ancient Egyptian saying. It's Baraka Bashad. It means, may the blessings be. So bless any way you want. You can say angels, pour blessings.
Mm-hmm.
But that will help change your environment. And if you start to allow yourself to see light when you go to work, and there are techniques I give my clients and have given over many years, you can help yourself by, while you're at a workplace, most of us have got to go somewhere to get a drink of water, whether it is we keep it on our desk or we go to a cooler, whatever it is you do, then you need to do a simple practice. And if you keep your own water bottle, I would literally write on it, because water is a crystalline structure that can be coated, and it will take in whatever you write on that bottle. So put joy, peace, contentment, success, happiness, I'm alive, I'm grateful. Put whatever you want on the bottle, but write it on the bottle. And then when you go to take a drink, stop for a second, put your hands on both sides of the bottle or the cup, and allow Spirit to pour light into that, and see yourself in this beautiful waterfall of light as you drink that water. Begins a cleansing process, not just of the physical, but of all the parts of yourself that allows any negativity to attach. It's a cleansing process. It will bring you into balance again. So it's a simple technique. And you can do it anywhere you are, whatever kind of work you do, because we all, in this day and age, most of us carry a water bottle.
Yeah.
So I would go to that. And then if you start doing that, I can just about guarantee that within 2 weeks of this practice, within 2 weeks, you will start to either come up with an idea of how you can go to a new kind of job, or a doorway of some kind will open for you to have an opportunity for the job that is going to bring you greater satisfaction. That is a manifesting process. It sounds too simple to be true. Just do it. Just do it. Give Spirit a chance to manifest for you what you want. Instead of saying every day when you go to work, I hate my job, I hate my life, I don't know when I'm ever going to make ends meet, I hate paying bills. Going down the road of gratitude versus dislike or discontent or stress, gratitude opens doors. It magnetizes to you the things that you want. So check your language as you go through each day. Some people have things they say and they don't even realize they say them. I've had clients who've said, I really want to have a relationship. And I'll say to them, so tell me, what do you think of men, or what do you think of women, depending on, or what do you think of whatever sex it is that you're interested in? You know, what are some of the things that your mom told you about them, and what are some of the things that you say or you hear yourself say to your friends when they talk about them? You'll start to discover that there are statements that you don't even realize you think, or that have been hidden because they were something you attached as a result of your parents. And you need to get those statements and dissolve them. And you do that by changing them. I've heard people tell me, well, you know, all men are just, and you add whatever word you want to add to that, because I bet there's not a single woman listening who doesn't have a word they can add.
Well, you know, I can remember, I have a lot of women that, you know, are looking for a relationship, and I ask them, you know, well, what's going on? And they'll say, I always attract losers. I always attract people that are, and they go on and on and on about all of the negatives that they attract. But I want a perfect man. And I said, you know, if you put as much energy into wanting the perfect man as you do into all of the negative, you'd probably have one by now. And you're absolutely right. It is a matter of, I'm ready for a perfect relationship, and I'm open to whenever the universe wants to give me one. Works well. It really does. Yeah. But if you are perseverating on the negative stuff that has gone before, and if that's all you talk about, then that's what you will continue to draw into your life. We have a great deal of power.
Yes. Well, there's a spiritual law that is behind all of this in this area of the universe. And that spiritual law is simple. It says, as above, so below. Mm-hmm. We draw to ourselves, and there's another one that's a more human saying. It follows the same law. And that is that water shall seek its own level.
Yep.
So if you participate in an energy field that says men are losers, men are users, men are this, men are that, or women are this or that. And there are plenty of men who think that women are going to take every dollar out of their pocket and use it, and not, not be faithful. So if you say those things or you participate in them, you may say, well, I never say that, but then you remember, oh yeah, my friend so-and-so said that. Now, how did you respond? If you allowed her to continue to say that, then you are affirming what she's saying. Mm-hmm. So you will find that you will draw to yourself exactly the energy field that you participate in. That is, water seeks its own level. Absolutely. If you choose to participate in a level of consciousness that is high, that is positive, you will draw that. My nephew came to visit many, many years ago when he was still very young. He was at the 13 or so. And after he was there for 2 weeks, he said, Aunt Michele, it's mind-boggling. He said, I know what you say is that you only attract wonderful beings. He said, but I've been watching you, and everywhere you go, I don't care where it is, you attract wonderful beings. I said, Matthew, what you say, you will manifest. It is the law. It's a spiritual law. You will manifest what you say. Your word is your magic wand.
It is, but you have to believe it.
No, you just have to do it. The problem is your thought forms. When you say believe it, it's your thought forms are not in agreement. So you have to do it through all of your being, not just one piece. It's not just your mouth. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, if you start with your mouth and you use your hand and your mouth, that is to say, I will write it 21 times every day, you will change your thought forms. It takes about 21 days to do it, but if you are willing, you can.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree. And there was a minister that I studied with for a very long time, and we asked him one day, and I said, how do you deal with people that are just toxic to you? And he said, you be kind to them. And I said, seriously? He said, and he looked at me and he said, fake it till you make it. And he said, the more you are trying to generate that kind of energy, the easier it gets, and then it suddenly does become natural. So it's exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like you repeat it, and it becomes a way of expressing yourself. Yeah. And it does work. It does work. It absolutely does work.
And this is an interesting statement of people who are toxic to you. People are only toxic to you if you have allowed them to be. Mm-hmm. If when you look at a person and they're needy or they're pulling on you or they want to use you in some way, they have a need and they have a fear. And that's why they're doing that. But if you look at them with love and then you go forward and say to Spirit, work with this individual. I don't have room in my life to work with them now. You work with them. Bring in someone who can bring them into balance if it is not me. And Spirit will flip them to someone else. Mm-hmm. Sometimes Spirit brings you people who are not at your level of consciousness because they are what I call flippers. They're getting ready to flip, but they need someone to give them a push. I'm not fond of doing that. And years and years ago, I had Spirit put me in that position, and I was teaching a dream class at the time. I used to teach dream classes. I did for 16 years. And this one night I went to class, and the only person who came was this one man. And I knew that was a spiritual setup. I knew Spirit had something in mind. That's why no one else was there. I didn't know what they had in mind. But within a couple of minutes, I found I was kicked out of my body, and I was standing next to my body. Well, the spiritual master who I agreed to allow him to use my body took it over and started talking to this man. And I heard every word that he said out of my mouth, which I could never have said. I was standing there shaking in my boots because he was so direct to this man, telling him, you have to get off the fence. You can't sit on the fence any longer. And I could never be that strong with someone. I am too kind and too loving to be able to just kind of call it in its black and white form. And I was not capable of doing that at that time. And so that's how the whole night went. And then the man left, and I thought, oh my God, I'll never see him again. He will never come back after that talk. Oh my God. And I was just freaked out about it for about 2 weeks. And then I found myself in the shopping mall, and I could see the man at the other end of the mall coming towards me. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to come up and probably slap me or something. And I thought I could hide, but he'll find me. So just stand here and wait and take your punches. Mm-hmm. So I did. And he came running up to me, and he put his arms around me. He says, what you said to me the other night was everything I needed to hear. I got off the fence, and I'm on the road now, and I'm going to achieve the things I want to achieve. And I just stood there kind of limp, like, okay, that's why I let the spiritual masters talk through me, because I could not have done that. If you give freedom to your higher self to allow that divinity to come through, you'll find that the right things are said. And you find that you walk a path that brings you peace.
Absolutely.
I didn't have peace for 2 weeks, but I eventually got it.
Well, yes, I totally agree with what you say. Unfortunately, sometimes ego gets in there, and it's hard sometimes to differentiate between the higher consciousness and ego. I'm pretty good now at it. It doesn't slip in as often as once it did, but my ego is really good at pretending to be my higher self.
Well, that's the lesson of discernment, which usually takes 2 years at least of practice to get past. Yeah. We need to be able to discern the different energy between our mind and our higher self. And the ego is part of them. It usually goes hand in hand with the mind. The mind can be very misleading because it will go out of its way to mimic the higher self. Mm-hmm. And so we have to learn to let the mind babble in the corner and move on with the higher self. And we can learn that. If I can learn it, you can learn it. Anyone can learn it. Anyone. I am no different than anyone who's listening.
Oh, yeah. No, it is definitely a practice that as you go along this pathway, that you do need to learn that discernment and have that ability to just say, go to lunch, go to a movie, I'm going to be busy here for a while with my higher self. And you know, it isn't so much anymore my actually doing that, but it's become a very natural routine for me as I deal with people when I'm in a position where it is really important that my higher self be coming through and not my ego. I let the ego play every now and then, but not in the important places. And so, you know, I let it play with the computer.
It's good to let go of the darn computer. I tell you, I'm so much better now. If you saw me 10 years ago, forget about it. I am usually different. It's very rare my husband comes in anymore and has to say, step away from the computer. It's incredibly rare. But, yeah, you know, it's I don't know, it's stepping back. And I find in my life what was the greatest trigger was time. Time was always the trigger. I pack a day like you would not believe. Most people could not deal with the way I pack a day. I literally know the minute-to-minute experience where I'll be, what I'll be doing, and how I will achieve whatever it is I'm doing. I pack it. And so what happens, what I have had to learn, the huge lesson that I've had to learn, is when Spirit interrupts and puts something in my path, I literally dismiss everything that I had on that list. I have learned to dismiss it, to say, okay, Spirit has put this in my path. You get 100% of my attention right now. And for as long as that takes, until we are at a point where you're at peace, and then I will redo my list.
Yeah, the list never goes away. It's always there.
No. I can guarantee I will run out of this body with my list, and the angels will say, put your list down now, Avanti. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, no, I have found over time being very flexible with what Spirit puts in my way is it makes for a more challenging, a more joyful experience of a day. And it doesn't happen all the time, but every now and then when it does happen, it's like, oh, what an adventure we're going to go through today. And it is exciting.
It is. I totally agree with you. And, my friends know how I fill my days. And so they'll say, oh, I probably can't call her. And I just tell them all the time. I always make a statement to them. When it is time and you need me, just call me. And my clients know that. I know Spirit will tell me, pick that phone up. And they don't tell it to me like that. I just know it because it's knowingness. It's not a matter of a voice in my head. It's knowingness. I know when not to pick it up, and I know when to pick it up. And I'll pick it up, and someone will say, my daughter is missing. Do you think I'm going to walk away from that no matter what I have on my list? Of course not.
No.
Of course not. I will immediately move into that zone to help her find her daughter and find out what's going on. Is she safe? Is she okay? I don't want anyone out there, anyone, whether you know me or you don't know me, to me, you're still my family because we're all family. Well, I would pick up the phone and help. So
I have found in those instances that basically time folds so that no matter how much time you spend with them, it really doesn't seem to be that long at all, and everything else falls into place. I have been amazed that, I've been rushing someplace and the phone has rung and it will be somebody with a similar situation or the passing of someone close. And I will spend what feels like an hour or 2 hours speaking with them and then, when I'm off the phone, I realize that it really hasn't been that long and I'm not going to be late and I'm not going to miss what I was supposed to do. The element of folding time when working with Spirit is something I am very comfortable with, and it happens very frequently.
Yeah, I call it expansion of time.
Okay.
But years ago I was in California, and it was the day I was in San Jose, and my husband was in Reno. And we had friends coming over to Reno. They had come from a long distance, and we were going to celebrate Joe's birthday. And I was in California, and I knew I had to leave at a certain time to be there at exactly 5 o'clock to drive all the way from San Jose to Reno. And my aunt, my very old aunt, my great aunt, was there. And as I was getting ready to go out the door, she stopped me and she said, "Could you please read for me? Could you please sit with me? I have questions." And I knew that if I would probably never see her again in my life, and I knew that I had to do that. That was important. It was important to her. It was important. I also knew that if I wasn't there at 5 o'clock, my husband would have a panic. And this was before cell phones. There were no cell phones. And I sat with her, and I was with her for a good hour and a half. Finally got in my car about 2 hours after I should have been in my car. And I arrived at exactly 1 minute to 5 p.m. Impossible. It could not be done. So, yeah, it can be done. Anything can be done if you have the faith. It can be done.
Absolutely. And I think that the element of faith is something that all of us are going to be searching for and holding on to in the next 4 years, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that the power that we have within us is amazing. It will get us through anything, and it will, the next 5 years do not have to be traumatic and difficult.
Absolutely. When I talk about transformation, which is what's taking place in this next period, there will be experiences like what we've already seen, different kinds of them. But do you have to be a part of it? Do you have to be within it? How will it affect you? These are choices.
Mm-hmm.
And choose to stay in balance. Choose to listen to your heart. You will find that you are always in the perfect place. Years ago, I was in the car with my cousin. I don't know if I ever told you this story. And this is a long time ago. I was like 17 at the time. And really we were in the car with his friends, and Spirit told me, get out of the car now. And I said to him, stop the car, I'm getting out. And everybody in the car just looked at me. Are you out of your mind? You don't even know where you are. I said, it doesn't matter. Just stop the car. And he did stop, and I got out. And a few blocks later, he had a terrible accident.
Mm.
Spirit will tell you where to go. And Spirit knows exactly how to tell you. Spirit might say, there is a donut shop and you just love donuts and you see it and you go to the donut shop. Fine. You went to the donut shop and everybody else had an accident down the road. But you stopped at the donut shop. Part of you says, oh no, I shouldn't be eating donuts. Another part of you says, oh, we love donuts.
Yeah. No, I've had moments like that where things have people have looked at me and I've said, no, I can't tell you why, but I have to do this. And there have been a couple of times where it was avoiding an accident, and then it's kind of interesting in a way. One time especially, I caused the accident. People had been telling me, and this goes back a lot of years, that I should do this work full time. And I basically said, I'm a single parent. I have been teaching for a long time. I can't afford to not have my salary. So when I retire, I will do this full time. But until then, I have to continue on this pathway but when I retire, I will do this work full time. And I can't tell you how many times I said it, but it had to be thousands of times. And because of that, I was in a car accident that forced me into early retirement in my 40s to do this work full time. Mm-hmm. And when I look back at it now, I knew that it was something I needed to do, but I didn't have enough faith to stop a teaching career and do something full time that I'm uncomfortable taking money for anyhow. So that right. I was put in a position because of the car accident that I did have income, so that I had a paycheck, so that I didn't have to rely on the spiritual work, so that I could do the spiritual work full time and not put the burden of living on it.
Yeah.
And so it was, but I caused the accident. If I had had the faith at that time, I would have retired and I would have said, okay, let's go. And it worked out the way it was supposed to, obviously, but we can, by just what we say, cause things to happen. And, you were talking earlier about not liking your job. And if you say you don't like your job and you don't want to be there enough, the universe will say, well, she's not moving or he's not moving on this. So let's just get her out of the job and let her do what she needs to do. And
yeah, that's the hard way to do it, though. If you can do it with love, in a different way, where you have the faith and you have the love.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit will open the doorway for you so you can walk through it. It would have been nicer if you just had a lottery ticket that won, or someone just said, I was one of your students and I made all this money here. You can have this money so you can retire. It would have been nicer. Most people can't see those pictures. And that comes actually to another issue that most people have, is that we have our belief system of how things should work. And we think we need to have all the details in order to have the outcome we want. And that is the furthest thing from the truth there is. Forget the details. You don't need any of the details. You simply need the passion and the heart. If you have those things, you have everything you need. Just go forward. Details will follow. You'll get the details. I guarantee they'll come.
It does happen, and it usually happens in the most unexpected ways that you sit back and you have to chuckle over, because the universe does contribute greatly to your life if you give it a chance. Most people have a power struggle with the universe. They're stuck in the physicality of their life. They forget that they are a spirit on a human journey, and that the spirit, can help and influence and impact your life. But the physicality, the humanness, the heaviness of the physical often makes us feel that we have to be in control, and if we're not in control, then there's something wrong, and it slows us down.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking,
that's the issue of faith. That comes back to faith, having faith that who you are and who the beings of light are there for you. Having faith that they will support you through anything.
Absolutely.
And
they do. And
oh yeah, and they'll also, if you will give them, if you will acknowledge them, they will work with you in whatever way you want them to work with you. They're always ready. For some people, the easiest way is through a book or through a radio. For others, it's just a direct contact. The big problem most people have is they don't allow themselves to expand beyond what they know. They don't give that freedom to themselves. It has to be down this route. I trained to be this kind of person, and this is the kind of business I know how to do. I don't have anything else. There are no other skills. I can't go from, and I don't like it, but this is where I am. That's locking yourself into a physical mindset. Instead of saying, I have these amazing skills that I learned. I don't know where else they could fit, but Spirit, I'm ready. I don't like where I am. So why did I learn these skills? You obviously know where I need to be. Put me there. Show me. Open the door.
And it's funny because we all get the subtleties. And the more we acknowledge them, the greater they become. And sometimes I tell people who say, no, I don't. And I tell them to have, to just get a journal. And every coincidence that happens in their life is one of those subtleties. And the more you write down the subtleties that happen, I found a parking place where I needed one. The phone rang and I knew who it was. I was hungry for something and it was right there in front of me. I mean, all of those little subtleties are your higher consciousness, the spirit within you, giving you inclinations, giving you nudges, so to speak. And the more you acknowledge them by writing them down, the more you recognize that the subtleties are happening, the greater the subtleties become, until you begin to feel a better balance between the spirit and the physical. And when that balance happens, then magic happens in your life. It's just amazing.
Yeah. That's what I call focus,
Mm-hmm.
It's all a matter of focus. What you focus on, you manifest. And by writing down the synchronistic experiences in your life, you focus on them. And when you focus on them, you empower them. When you empower anything, it becomes bigger, becomes
Yeah.
more obvious, it expands. And that's, focus is key. It's a key part of manifestation. That's why when you hear someone focusing on all the negative, bless them. Just keep blessing them. Don't participate in their negativity. Bless them. And if you can, make them laugh. Um, because they are out of balance. They are focusing on negativity, which means they are creating a world of negativity.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you choose. And if they're trying to pull you in because they're your mother or your cousin or your husband, I hope not, you are being pulled in to their world of negativity. And if you fight it, you actually attach yourself to it. So don't fight it. Don't tell them it's bad. Don't tell them, no, don't do that. Don't go down that road because then you're fighting it. You have to bless it. You have to bless it. When you bless it, Spirit will do amazing things with you. I find that when I bless it, I think about my life. My mom was, she could be the most negative person on the planet. She always liked to point out things that didn't even exist and say they were real. And you knew she was doing it because it was a way of control. It had nothing to do with reality. My mother was brilliant. But when she would do that, I used to just laugh. And I say, I know you enjoy that, Mom. Good for you.
But
and I would laugh. And when I did that, it would break her contact with it. And she'd start laughing too because she knew I knew. And she started to let go.
You actually have hit on one of, I believe, the strongest, most powerful tools we have, and that's laughter. That genuine and genuine laughter, not laughing at somebody, but laughing with someone.
Absolutely.
And when I can get someone to laugh, when I can, get the humor, the joy into any situation, I know that a seed has been planted that will someday become something very precious to that person. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but the chuckle, the bigger the laugh, the bigger the seed.
Yeah, that's that is the greatest gift. I've said that a million times. There is no greater gift than laughter. I know I had a lifetime as a jester. It was pretty cool. But
I could see that. I could see that.
I don't have that right now, but nonetheless, years ago I was with someone that I love dearly, and there were a couple other people with us. The car was full, and I was driving, and we were supposed to be going blackberry picking. And the person in the front seat who was with me, who I love dearly, was saying all these horrible things. She was just in a zone that was really a bad zone. She was angry and she was upset, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, what am I going to do with all of this? And I could see the people in the back seat like totally freaking out. I'd look in my rearview mirror and I'm seeing them stressing, and I said to Spirit, I need help here. I don't know what to do with this. And as I was driving, she started saying, well, I just wish I'd die. Why can't I just die? And I drove down this road. I didn't know where I was. I knew I was headed close to the blackberries, but I didn't know exactly. And I drove down this road, and there on the right side was a cemetery. So I just stopped the car and said, get out and go lay down. You want to die? Go over there. And as soon as I did, she just started laughing. And everybody in the car laughed, and that was that.
Yeah, it breaks tension. But it can't be. It has to be genuine.
Yes. But spirit is the one who led me there. When you ask for help, it arrives. You don't know where it's going to arrive or how, and that's where don't let your linear mind try to control it. Just go with it. Go with the flow. It will show up. I guarantee it'll show up, and
Absolutely.
You'll be as amazed as everyone else.
Yeah, and that's so true. You just, and again, it's trust and it's faith. Something, the right thing is going to, I have never it's funny, when I was in school and we had to do public speaking, I would always be sick that day because I was terrified at speaking in front of groups of people. And as a result, over the years, I was being forced to speak in front of larger and larger and larger and larger audiences. And I got to the point where I just knew that I was going to open my mouth and I was going to say something that would not embarrass me. And as soon as I trusted that, there was such a wonderful flow of oratory often that was just and there were moments when I would stop and say, somebody write that down. That was good. And
it's spirit coming through. I understand totally.
and it's like, I must remember that to steal it, to write it someplace, because that was really good. And of course,
steal it from yourself.
Yeah. Well, but of course, I never did write this stuff down. And when it happens, even though I do say that, it was appropriate for the moment, for that moment in time, and it not only impacted other people, but it impacted me as well. And when you can get to that place where you can let go of your ego, let go of your humanness, and allow the spirit within you. I mean, I swear to you, it doesn't bore people. It is more entertaining than what you might think is funny. But it gives parables, it gives stories, it gives all from your experience. It's not that you're coming out of nowhere with any of this stuff, but the reality of trusting that spirit is going to put the right words at the right time in the right place in your mouth. It takes practice. It's not something that comes overnight. But I remember I used to do meditations, and for 17 years I did at least 1 or 2 meditations a week, and I used to write them down, and then I would read them, and they were often beautiful. And I remember going to where a meditation was going to be one night, and had my notebook with me, and when I opened it in the car to kind of read through it to make sure I was comfortable with the flow, I had blank pages, and there was not time to go home, and there were 60 people waiting, and I did some pacing up and down in the hallway, and somebody said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "My pages are blank. I don't understand it." And they said, "Well, you channeled it, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And they just looked at me and said, "So channel it again." Mm-hmm. And it was like, and from that moment on, I never wrote another meditation down.
I understand totally. I mean, I don't write anything down. What's there is there, baby, and that's what you're getting, because that's what Spirit says you should have. I don't know. I don't control it.
Well, that's why I never script these shows, because I know that whatever happens, we will be taken wherever we're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And I just always trust that. And I know that we had no calls tonight. And I do feel that I knew people were going to call, but apparently they weren't able to get through. But that was appropriate. So, you trust it. You go with where the energy takes you. And that's what gives, that's what makes a show alive. Mm-hmm. When
yeah, well, I never concern myself with that sort of thing. So I know Spirit has a plan, and I don't always know what the plan is, nor do I ask, because I learned a long time ago it doesn't matter. It's absolutely irrelevant, whatever I think. But I'm here, and I'll be the vehicle for whatever the needs of the audience are, which I just leave that open. The whole time we've been talking to you, I have been staring at this mass shooting ingress chart, and what stands out as I'm looking is the fixed stars. And for people who don't know what fixed stars are, who maybe study astrology, that's the actual constellations that we have named up in the sky. Like the Big Dipper, it's made up of fixed stars, and some of those stars we have had research on and followed. And the star of Leo is the big lion constellation. And in that constellation, the biggest star, one of the most powerful stars, is called Zosma. That's with the Z as in zebra, Zosma. And Zosma is the broken back of the lion. And this mass shooting, the ingress chart, has Mars conjunct Zosma at exactly 29 minutes, which is considered a critical degree in astrology. So here you have Mars, the planet of action, the planet of male energy, the planet of weaponry, all iron, conjunct the backbone, breaking the back of the lion. The lion is the leader. The lion is the king of the country. The lion is the president. So when we look at this, and Zosma is usually a statement of martyrdom. This is breaking the back, in other words, breaking the ideas that may stem from the leader of the country as a result of a martyrdom issue that is caused by the actions or activity of or energy of something that is a weapon.
Okay.
And it is a critical point in time.
Oh, I will buy that. It definitely.
There is definitely going to be, when you consider the doorway, the Grand Trine doorway, which is Saturn, Uranus, and the North Node, which is the future soul's directive, the future outcome. There's a statement here that there will be a revolution to make change in the law or structure to lead the way into the future. This is a powerful chart, a powerful statement, and we will have to watch and see how this manifests. God bless every one of those beings who chose to leave this planet suddenly and unexpectedly.
Yeah, that was...
I send my heart to every single one of the people left behind because I know their hearts are broken.
Oh my God, yeah. And
I know they have no idea what the greatness of these beings is. But when I look at this chart, I see it.
Oh yeah, something massively happened. There's no doubt about it. And
the nodes, to just tell you, the nodes are at another degree, and I think I mentioned it when we first started, 22 degrees, the degree of mastery.
Yeah, what comes from this experience is going to be a revelation of sorts, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh. Michele, thank you so much. This has been a fabulous show.
I've been honored as usual. Thank you, and thanks to everyone who listened.